a sort of growing attention and prioritization on the mystical experience as the experiential high mark of a good psychedelic session. Now, previously, when you talked about the psychedelic cowboy and the competitive ego deathing, that aside, that's kind of a different issue.
That's a great phrase, by the way.
Thank you. I'll try to put it into Urban Dictionary. Anyone listening, if you put that into Urban Dictionary, please quote me. Yeah, so, but you also speak about this sort of like, this in the research, this prioritization and attention to the mystical experience as being an experiential high mark of a good psychedelic session. But in your book, you suggest, well, hold on, that's not necessarily true. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And this is, I'm glad we're looping back on this about the overvalue we've put on large doses and that the mystical experience is the critical therapeutic factor. In Europe, they've been using psychedelics, and they use them in a psycholytic way, not psychedelic. So they use them at lower doses and embedded in a therapeutic relationship. So maybe they do a journey once a month within a therapy context of 1 or 2 years. So you get a sense of many more journeys, but weekly therapy, at least weekly therapy, maybe even twice a week, but you have a sense of working over time and a more gradual open up and working through. And this is the opposite of one night of ayahuasca is worth 10 years of therapy. It's that, wait a minute, we have some work to do, and the entheogens can help us open things up, and those things that come up have to be worked through. So I think it was in the ayahuasca book. I'm not sure where I wrote about this, but it was a 40-ish, what I now call a young guy, who had been, from that school of one night of ayahuasca is worth 10 years. And then he said he finally, as you say, kind of woke up and realized all of his relationships were crashing and burning. And so he decided to go into therapy. And he said, this is a revelation. It does something completely different. And the ceremonial experiences from working with ayahuasca can feed into therapy, but they don't necessarily always clean it up completely. And so there's work to do in a therapeutic context. So I can send you a recent article that just came out about the psycholytic approach that's used in Europe. And I think in the title, it talks about it as a neglected approach. Now, I have to say, this would cost a lot of money. This is not cost effective. 2 years of therapy is a significant investment, but it is another way of using the medicines in a therapeutic approach. And I hope, again, that this is not lost and becomes one of the items on the on the smorgasbord of using psychedelics. I think this is one legitimate approach.
Yeah, it makes me think of like an experience I had recently chatting with a friend of mine. They had been doing lower doses of psilocybin. Well, should I share this story? No, I won't. I don't think it's fair. I don't know for sure. No one would ever know who I was talking about, but I don't know if it's fair. So, okay.
And I want to clarify, psycholytic doses are not microdoses. Microdoses are subperceptual. You don't feel them. A lower dose is still a journey. It's just not a mind-blowing, ego-deathing competition.
When I've helped other people through with integration work, it's usually the experiences where they're like, oh yeah, I got to have more or go big or try to get that mystical experience. That's where the healing is, that they end up getting quite hurt. And that generally the consequences of a lower dose session that doesn't go so well is usually less dramatic than a higher dose session that doesn't go so well. Yeah.
Let's be real. Yeah. Yeah. A number of the old timers, not the women elders, but people who have been in this community for 40, 50 years, everybody knows someone who was damaged seriously and that it derailed their life in some way. So it's very serious. Damage happens. And, there's a risk if you don't consider your medical and psychiatric history. And there's a risk if you uh, pushed too far.